Shalom, my friends. Welcome to this week's Word Study. Last Tuesday on my newscast, where I did my personal thoughts section, I was talking to the men, all the heads of the house. And someone asked me to do a study on that, and I thought, yeah, it's a good idea. It's an important message. It's at a crucial time. This is something that all men out there really need to have a serious thought about. And I'm also going to talk to the women. I'm going to talk to younger people who are living in a house where they are not the head. Perhaps it's their parents and so on. I'm going to talk to singles. I'm going to talk about marriage. I'm going to try and cover the whole gamut as best I can. But initially, we're looking at Deuteronomy chapter 11, verses 18 through 20, where Elohim says, "You shall lay up these, my words, in your minds and in your hearts and in your entire being, and bind them for a sign upon your hands and as forehead bands between your eyes." Now here's the key point to all you men out there, heads of households, and that goes to single moms as well. "You shall teach them," Abba's word, his words, "to your children." This is a commandment. "And you are to speak of them when you sit in your house, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you get up." In other words, the Father's Torot, his teachings, his word, should be at the forefront of your consciousness at all times. And you're commanded to teach your children. Men, teach your wives and your children the Father's word. This is your position. And you will be held responsible for your actions concerning this. Deuteronomy, that section closes with, "You shall write them upon the doorposts of your house and on your gates." Now, as a side note, there's a video out there you, my friends, have been asking me about. A young Jewish boy was taken up to the Shamayim and showed many, many, many things. And he said, from what he was told there, that World War III is going to break out in a matter of months. And the initiator of that, known in the Father's word as Gog, he said that he was told there in the Shamayim that Gog is Obama. Obama is going to start the war. It's in a matter of months. And anyway, you'll see this graphic at the end of this video. I'm going to post this also in next Tuesday's news. And of course, below this video, you see a text link. You can click on it. You can go watch that video. I urge you to do so. I believe every stitch of it is nothing but the truth. And it's a little bit difficult because it's all the audio is in Hebrew, and they have English subtitles, and a lot of times they're hard to read. But not that hard. It works out well enough. So getting to today's study, first, concerning those of you who are married, 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 3, we read, "The husband should give to his wife her conjugal rights, that is, goodwill, kindness, and what is due her as his wife, and likewise the wife to her husband. Verse 4, the wife does not have exclusive authority and control over her own body, but the husband has his rights. Likewise, also, the husband does not have exclusive authority and control over his body, but the wife has her rights. Verse 5, do not refuse or deprive each other of your due marital rights, except, perhaps, by mutual consent for a time, so that you may devote yourselves unhindered to fasting and prayer. A lot of English Bibles just say to prayer, but the original language says fasting and prayer. And afterwards, resume marital relations so that Satan does not tempt you to sin because of your lack of self-control. This is an important thing that I doubt many married couples observe. We are told to abstain from marital relations from time to time for a period of time, to engage in fasting and prayer. And then, of course, after that agreed upon time, you resume so that the devil doesn't tempt you because of your, natural desires. Verse 6, Shaul is writing, and he says, note that I'm saying this more as a matter of permission and concession, not as a command. Verse 7, for I prefer that all men were like myself in this matter of self-control, but each has his own special gift from Elohim, one of this kind and one of another. Now, as a side note, Shaul was most likely married and a widower. After all, he was a member of the Sanhedrin, which requires being married. Also, as a side note, I'm not reading for any particular version of the Father's Word. I expound on His Word to bring greater light to the original languages that they were penned in. Now we turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 11, still focusing on married couples. 1 Corinthians, Corinthiim, chapter 11, verse 3 reads, the head of every man is Mashiach, and the head of a woman is her husband, and the head of Mashiach is Yahuwah. Skip to verse 8. It says, for man does not originate from woman, but woman originates from man. Verse 9, for indeed man was not created for the sake of woman, but woman was created for the sake of man. Verse 10, therefore the woman ought to have a sign of authority on her head, for the sake of the malachim, the angels, so as not to offend them. Malachim, angels, are present at all fellowships, learning how Elohim works with us, and they are greatly offended by any disobedience to his word. Now, also, Shaul is not degrading women here. He is simply saying that men should be men and women should be women. Satan wants to blur the differences between men and women. Turning to 1 Peter, that's Kepha, chapter 1, verse 12. The word, it points out, into these things even the malachim long to look. The malachim, the angels, are always around any gatherings of fellowship, people talking about the Father's Word, including now. We turn to Ephesians chapter 5, verses 22 through 33. Wives, Be subject to your own husbands as a service to the Adon, the master. For the husband is head of the wife, as Hamashiach is head of the called out ones, as he is the Savior of the body. But as the called out ones are subject to Hamashiach, so also wives should be subject to their husbands in everything, respecting both their position as protector and their responsibility to Elohim as head of the house. I repeat, responsibility to Elohim as head of the house. Men, are you listening? You have a responsibility to Elohim. You are the head of a house. You should be making Elohim number one on a list of one in your house. You need to take charge of your house and make Elohim your headship, making that obvious to everyone in your house. Now, where the wives are to respect their husbands and their position. I like Chuck Missler's joke about this portion of Scripture. He says that wives being subject to their husbands means learning to duck so Elohim can hit your husband. It's funny. It makes a good point. As wives, you are not to correct your husband. That's not operating properly in your role. You are stepping outside of your role. That is not your thing to do. Rather, you turn to Abba Father in prayer and discuss your concerns about your husband with Abba Father and trust him to take care of it. Verse 25, husbands, love your wives. Seek the highest good for her and surround her with a caring, unselfish love, just as Hamashiach also loves the called out ones and gave himself up for them, so that he might kadosh, make dedicated, the called out ones, having cleansed them by the washing of water with the word, so that in turn he might present the called out ones to himself in glorious splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, but that they would be kodesh, dedicated to Elohim, and blameless. In this way, husbands should and are morally obligated to love their own wives as being, in a sense, their own bodies. He who loves his wife also loves himself. For no one ever hated his own flesh, but instead he nourishes and protects and cherishes it, just as the Adon, the master, does the called out ones, because we are members, parts of his body. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and his mother, and shall be joined and faithfully devoted to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. This mystery, this secret now being revealed of the two becoming one, is great. But I am speaking with reference to the relationship of Hamashiach and the called out ones. However, each man among you, without exception, is to love his wife as his very own self, with behavior worthy of respect and esteem, always seeking the best for her with an attitude of loving kindness. And the wife must see to it that she respects and delights in her husband, that she notices him and prefers him and treats him with loving concern, treasuring him, honoring him, and holding him dear. Now we look at Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4. Fathers, do not provoke your children to anger. Do not exasperate them to the point of resentment with demands that are trivial or unreasonable or humiliating or abusive, nor by showing favoritism or indifference to any of them, but bring them up tenderly with loving kindness in the discipline and the instruction of Yahweh. 1 Timothy chapter 2, verses 9 through 15. Women should adorn themselves modestly and appropriately and discreetly in proper clothing, not with elaborately braided hair and gold or pearls or expensive clothes, fancy hairdos, makeup and things being overdone. Not an admirable thing. Verse 10, rather, they should be adorned by good deeds, helping others, as is proper for women who profess to worship Elohim. Verse 11, let a woman learn in quietness and in entire submissiveness. Not subjection. Priority does not mean superiority. We're talking about roles. We're not talking about demeaning women. Men are above women, as if women are less than men. That's what Satan likes to promote. We're talking about the roles that Elohim created in man and woman. Verse 12, I permit no woman to teach or to have authority over a man. I permit no woman to teach a man or to have authority over a man. She is to remain in quietness and to keep silence. Now, she can teach other women, she can teach children, but she's not to teach men. Verse 13, because Adam, was formed first, then Hawa, Eve. And it was not Adam who was deceived, but the woman who was deceived and deluded and fell into transgression. Note, Adam is a model of Yeshua. He gave himself for Hawa, Eve, as Yeshua gave himself for the called out ones. Verse 15, nevertheless, the sentence put upon women of pain in childbearing does not hinder their soul's salvation, and they will be saved eternally as long as they continue being washed by and growing in his word, in love and kadosh, making themselves dedicated, using good sense. Note, this verse does not mean all women are to bear children. Now, getting back to Adam and Hawa, Adam and Eve, in Genesis 3:16 we read, to the woman he said, I will greatly multiply your grief and your suffering in pregnancy and the pains of childbearing. With spasms of distress you will bring forth children. Yet your desire will be for your husband, and he will rule over you. Now in the English, that doesn't quite tell us much. Your desire, a woman's desire will be for her husband. Let's look at the word for desire. In the original Aramaic Hebrew, that's Teshuka. It means a craving to control. Comes from Strong's number H8669. It means stretching out after, desiring, longing, craving. Really what it's saying is that the curse on women would be that they have this craving and this desire to control men. Teshuka is spelled Tau, Shin, Wa, Kuf, and He. Tau to mark a location. It has to do with one's signature, a monument. Sheen, picture of two front teeth, has to do with a pair or the second one. Wah, picture of a tent peg, a nail or a hook that secures something. Kuf, picture of the sun at the horizon, has to do with the cycles, a cycle. Rising in the east, Kadam, back to the beginning. Setting in the west, Yam, into the darkness. And then we have Hay, picture of a spiritual man, has to do with who one's headship is and being yoked to and taught by one's headship. So this word is saying that Elohim's curse on women is that her Teshuka will be for her husband. He will be like a monument to her, and she will want to put her own signature on him, to make him her other half, to hook him and reel him in, to make him her own property, time and time again, perhaps confusing his headship by trying to be his master. Now we turn to 1 Timothy, Timotheos, chapter 3, verses 4 and 5. Now in most English Bibles you see the word bishop, which, I don't like that one because, the world has turned that into like some kind of a title and a position that puts bishops above the flock, you might say, and that's not the right idea. But 1 Timothy chapter 3 verses 4 and 5 reads, "A man who desires to be an overseer or a director or a counselor of the called out ones." Not a bishop, not somebody who rules. An overseer, or maybe a director or a counselor of the called out ones, desires an excellent task. But he must rule his own household well, keeping his children under control with true dignity, commanding their respect in every way and keeping them respectful. Now this is also the definition of a man who is being a proper head of his household. He keeps his children under control with dignity, not, forcefulness, but because they respect him, and because he commands their respect in every way, and he keeps them respectful. Continuing, the word says, "For if a man does not know how to rule his own household, how can he take care of the called out ones of Elohim?" Now, we take a look at the subject of divorce. 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 10 reads, "And to the married people I command, not I, Shaul, but the Adon, Elohim, commands that the wife is not to separate from her husband. But if she does separate from him and divorce him, she is to remain single and unmarried. Otherwise, she is to be restored to favor with her husband." In other words, a woman leaves her husband, she's to remain single and unmarried. The only other choice is to be restored to favor with her husband. And the husband is also commanded that he should not put away or divorce his wife. In the book of Matthew, that's Matthew chapter 19, verse 9, Yeshua says, "Whoever divorces his wife and marries another woman commits adultery, period." Except, he gives one exception. He says, whoever divorces his wife, except for sexual immorality, and marries another woman, commits adultery. Now, Yeshua here is not saying it's all right to marry another woman, even though your wife was unfaithful to you. He's saying, in this case, Abba, Father, and I, we understand the difficulty of that. And if your wife has been unfaithful to you sexually, we will allow your divorcing her and marrying another woman. But outside of that, if a man divorces his wife for any other reason, he's to remain single and not to marry again. And really, in both cases, people are better off. A lot of times the flesh is weak. People, they get married and things change, and then they're not happy, so they'll divorce their mates, really oftentimes without good reason, thinking, I'm going to go find somebody else. This guy's no good, or this woman's no good. I'm going to go find somebody else, and I'll be happy with them. And, of course, they're not, mostly because they're not making Elohim number one on a list of one in their lives, which is why they're acting this way in the first place. But they're always looking for happiness through someone else, and it never happens that way. You have to find happiness here. Just like when they have problems, a lot of people like to blame other people instead of taking the responsibility for their own problems on themselves. At any rate, anyone who divorces, they're better off staying single the rest of their lives and making your relationship with Elohim. And again, if you do that in the first place, then you probably never would divorce. Verse 12, to the rest I say, and note that I am saying this, not the Adon, Shaul is clarifying. And then he says, for Yeshua did not discuss this. Here, I think here he's talking about those 3 years. I think I talked about this in last week's study. Those 3 years in Syria, where Shaul, Paul, was taken up to the third Shamayim and to paradise, and was given direct revelation from Yeshua. He's referring to that here, where in verse 12 he says, to the rest I say, and then he gives a note. He says, I, Paul, Shaul, am saying this, not Elohim, for Yeshua did not discuss this with me. Talking about those 3 years in Syria. That if any believing man has a wife who does not believe in Mashiach, and she thinks well to live with him, let him not send her away. Verse 13, and if any believing woman has an unbelieving husband, and he thinks well to live with her, let her not send him away. Verse 14, because the unbelieving husband has been kadosh, made kodesh, made dedicated, by this union with his kodesh, dedicated wife, or the unbelieving wife has been kadosh, made kodesh, dedicated, by union with her kodesh, dedicated husband. Otherwise your children would be unclean, not made kodesh. But this way they are kodesh, dedicated to Elohim. Verse 15, if the unbelieving partner actually leaves, let them leave. In such cases, the remaining believer is not bound. Elohim has called us to shalom, peace. For how can you be sure, O wife, whether you shall be the instrument that saves your husband? Or how can you be sure, O husband, whether you shall be the instrument that saves your wife? So, if you're a believer, you're married, and your mate is not a believer, if as a husband, it's your responsibility to teach her Yahweh's word. If you're a wife, it's your responsibility to talk to Abba Father about your husband and ask him to call your husband and create an appetite in him for his word. 1 Peter, that's Kepha, chapter 3, verse 1, elaborates a bit, saying to wives, even if any husband does not obey the word, they may be won over, not by discussion, but by your Kodesh behavior. Again, not by discussion. Why? Because women are not to ever attempt teaching men. It's a commandment. The devil will use it to make things even worse. But here, Kepha is saying that your husband can be won over if he's an unbeliever, but not by discussion, not by you trying to convince him, but rather by your Kodesh behavior, your dedicated behavior, your dedication to Elohim, just by letting him see your love and your dedication to Abba Father, Yeshua HaMashiach, the indwelling Ruach HaKodesh. That is what will win him over, just by him seeing your love and dedication to Elohim, and the fact that you're not trying to control him. Now we look to singles, people who are not married. Back to 1 Corinthians chapter 7 again. Verse 1, it's good, and by that I mean advantageous, expedient, it's profitable, it's wholesome for a man not to touch a woman, not to cohabit with her. It's good, profitable, wholesome for a man to remain unmarried. Verse 2, but because of the temptation to impurity and to avoid immorality, let each man have his own wife, and let each woman have her own husband. Skip over to verse 8, and I say to the unmarried people and to the widows, I declare that it is good, advantageous, expedient, and wholesome for them to remain single, even as I am. Verse 9, but if they have not self-control, if they don't have restraint of their passions, then they should marry. For it's better to marry than to be aflame with passion and tortured continually with ungratified desire. Now truly, the Ruach is telling us here, it's best for people not to marry, period. However, if you can't control your passions, then yeah, you should get married. And really what it comes down to is if someone is really developing a strong relationship with Elohim, then those passions are much more easily controlled, and they're better off not being married. They're better off growing in their relationship with Elohim, because that is an eternal relationship that goes on in eternity in ways that none of us can even dream of right now. But anyone who is not developing that kind of a relationship, they're going to be too strong in the flesh. They're not going to be able to control it, and they're better off being married. Now, if you're not the head of the house, if you're someone who's living under someone else's roof, and perhaps if you're the only believer in the house, you may be asking, how do I deal with being a believer when the head of the house I live in doesn't want to hear what I have to say? I've had, younger people, teenagers, ask me, what do I do? I'm under my parents' roof. I'm the only one who's a believer. I'm trying to tell them these things. They don't want to listen. They think I'm off my rocker. For you, I have the answer to this question in another video I made. It's titled, How to Witness Your Love for Elohim. You'll see this graphic at the end of this video. Also, you'll see a text link underneath this video that you can click on. Go over there, check that video out. It tells you how to cope with these kinds of situations. Not only in your own house where you're the only believer, but also how do you deal with friends and people out there in the world who don't have that passionate relationship that you have. Now, finally, once again, Deuteronomy chapter 11, verses 18 through 20. You shall lay up these, my words, in your minds, in your hearts, in your entire being, and bind them for a sign upon your hands, and as forehead bands between your eyes. And you shall teach them to your children, speaking of them when you sit in your house, when you walk outside, when you lie down, and when you get up. The Father's words should be on your lips 24/7. And you shall write them upon the doorposts of your house and on your gates. So, my friends, this video is primarily aimed at men who are the heads of any house, encouraging you and admonishing you to be the proper head of your house by making Elohim number one on a list of one in your life. Young men who are married, if you're not being a man of Elohim, if you're not making Abba Father and our Messiah, Yeshua, and his indwelling Ruach, his Spirit dwelling in you, number one in your life, you're not going to have much of a household to be the head of. You're not going to have much of a marriage. It's going to be filled with problems that cannot be resolved. Whereas, if you are making Elohim number one in your life, number one on a list of one, he's the only interest you have. Everything else falls to a greater second place. If you are doing that, then he will cover you. He says in his word, seek ye first the kingdom, the Malchut of Elohim, and all these things will be taken care of. The scripture is here. Where if you're not doing that, then you're going to try, to be a man, you're going to try and control things, and everything's going to go awry on you. You're going to wind up in a divorce eventually. Your children aren't going to respect you. Your wife is not going to respect you. And this message, has always been important throughout all of history, but it's important now like never before. Again, I refer to this video with this young Jewish boy who went up to the Shamayim, came back with a message. Our time is short. According to this kid, according to what he was told in the Shamayim, we have a matter of months. Now, if Obama is Gog, and if Obama's going to start World War III in Israel, it really is a matter of months, because we have a presidential election coming up next year, 2016, in November. And Obama will be out of office by January of 2017. And I've said now for, a couple of years, maybe more, that I'm not sure we'll see the next election. I think things could come crashing down before November next year, and there is no election. But at any rate, if what this young boy says is true, and Obama is Gog, and he's going to start World War III in Israel, then it is a matter of months. And like I said, this message has always been important, but now more than ever, if you're the head of a house, if you're a husband and the head of that union, it's time to, stop screwing around. Get yourself focused on the most important thing in all of your life. The thing that points at eternity, not this short time here. Get it together. Make Elohim number one in your life, and watch how everything in your life starts making the most beautiful, wonderful sense you've ever dreamed of. Wives, stop trying to control your husbands. Go to Abba Father with your concerns about them, and instead of nagging them or, trying to tell them what's right and what's wrong, be silent and set an example by letting him see your dedicatedness and your love for Elohim, and just leave it at that. Widows, you're the head of your house, and of course, without a husband, your headship is Elohim. And again, if you're not making him number one on a list of one, then you have no headship. And your life is going to be an absolute train wreck. Get Elohim in your life. Make him number one on a list of one. Recognize him as your headship. And if you have children, teach your children. Those of you who are single, get your focus on the Word. Get your focus on learning how to pitch your tent with Elohim, learning how he pitches his tent with you. Saturate yourself in his Word, daily prayer, seeking him, calling out to him. And, if you can, avoid marriage. Now, if you're really focusing your relationship with Elohim and growing in that, then you will be able to avoid marriage. But if not, then go ahead, get married and be the head of that house by making Elohim your headship. Once again, check out the graphics on the videos at the end of this video. Go watch them. Watch that video of this young Jewish boy and his message. If you're not sure how to deal with others who don't seem to have any respect for your love for Elohim, watch the other video, How to Witness Your Love for Elohim. And that's our study for this week, my friends. As always, I hope and I pray, now more than ever, because the time is short. There's no joke. Time is condensing. This world is not long to remain in the state that it's in. Things are we've seen it. Things are really escalating, but over the next 12 months, it's going to be more than anyone knew. So, like I was saying, I always hope and pray that this study is a berakah to you and yours. Abba willing, I'll see you here again next week. And until then, shalom, my friends.
Now 2,000 years have gone by, it's another working day. Some would rather let it lie, but the question still remain.